Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Last week with Chris Morris on the show, we touched upon the GOP elections in Williamson County and all that was going on there. Tonight, we're joined by Steve Hickey, the new chairman of Williamson County GOP, who's going to give us a better picture of the election and challenges made to the results. Steve oversees the planning and execution of operations for one of the largest and most active county Republican parties in the state. He's a retired Air Force veteran, having served 22 years on active duty. Thank you for your service. As an F-16 mission instructor and evaluator pilot, he has served in a variety of leadership positions. He's been awarded a myriad of major awards and decorations and is currently a commercial pilot for a major airline with over 9,000 hours of collective airtime. Steve, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Dave, thank you so much for having me. It's my honor to be here.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you. You got quite an impressive resume. What motivated you to run for GOP chair in Williamson County?
Well, to be honest with you, I've always been what I consider a conservative. I swore my first oath of service almost 40 years ago now. But I had never really taken any real interest in elected politics outside of voting in November general elections. Always voted religiously for Republicans, but never really did anything outside of having Facebook arguments with people on the left side of the spectrum. The election of 2020 is really what kind of changed things for me. I realized there was something very, very wrong in our country, in our body politic, and I realized I had to be involved in some way, shape, or form in preserving this great gift that was bequeathed to us by our forefathers. So I started getting involved with different groups. Started going to a men's group on Thursday morning in West Haven here in Franklin, and just meeting this person and that person and making connections. And before I knew it, I was the secretary of a political action committee here in Williamson County called Williamson Families. And we were very active in the 2022 election cycle. We got some very, very good candidates elected to office. Not as many as we would have liked, but some very, very good, what I would call constitutional conservatives who cared about their community, but also cared about, again, passing on this gift that we call America to our descendants. Basically, from there, I started getting more involved. Realized that our Republican Party needed leadership because it was kind of heading in a bad direction a few years ago. So I helped elect the previous board to office, a board that did a tremendous job in turning around the Republican Party, making it more of a citizen-centric organization, which is really what I want for the Republican Party to be. The former chair, Tracy Miller, he decided one term was enough for him, and I was blessed that the board that I'd helped elect, 5 of them decided to stick around, and they asked me if I would come on board as the chair candidate. So I went ahead and said yes, and we ran a campaign, and I am now the chairman of the Williamson County Republican Party, and it was a great honor to hold that title.
Well, congratulations. I know that wasn't an easy process. Now, you kind of mentioned one of your goals is to make it a party has citizen involvement and obviously, a party that has values, that actually stands up for something, rather than just, okay, well, whoever's got an R behind their name, that's who we're going to support, or, whoever's got the deepest pocket. So I think it's safe to say that your goals, you mentioned constitutional conservatives, so I'm glad to hear those are the goals. I kind of thought that's what they were, but let's talk about the election. And I know that before we get to this election in 2024, you had some concerns, and I think we got some slides for this, well, I know we do, in reference to some of the issues with crossover voting. Do you want to start off with that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So here in Tennessee, the whole state is a Republican supermajority. The Republicans run the show here in Tennessee, with the exception of your downtown Memphis, your downtown Nashville, The entire state is heavily red. But that doesn't mean that the Democrats still don't have a way of influencing our politics. And here in Williamson County, it happens in our primaries, in our county primaries in May, and our state primaries in August. So the slide that you were showing there, basically, we looked at previous May 2022 election cycle. And there were two elections, two races that had very heavy Democrat crossover voting. So that's somebody who has voted in a recent Democrat primary, and for the May 2022 primary, that would have been your March 2020 presidential primary. So those are people who are genuine Democrats who are now crossing over and voting in your Republican primaries to try to influence the outcome. And as you can see here, there were two races that you had, in one case, over 20%, in another case, about 17.5% of the total votes that were cast by people who were Democrats. And then fast forward to the August primary, and in early voting, we were seeing that you had almost 10% of the early vote was coming in from people who had voted in those Democrat primaries. That's
a lot of people, especially for Williamson County.
And people say, well, how much does that really matter? Well, when you're talking about a race that's decided by, in one case, Chris Richards up in District 7 here in Williamson County, he lost his election by 11 votes. 11 votes. And, you can see on that slide, you had well over 200 people, 200 Democrats that had participated in that election. And on top of that, we know for a fact that the Democrats had made a concerted effort to turn out their vote to vote against the conservative candidates. Now, you can make the argument that, well, it's primary, we have an open primary cycle here in Tennessee, which technically is not true, but for all intents and purposes, in reality, it is open. You can vote for whomever you want in this election and vote for the opposite party in the next election. Yeah. And that's not right. But what's happening is you have Democrats that are watering down the vote of the conservative electors here. And Republicans in Tennessee, they need to stand up and say, no, this is not acceptable. We do not want Democrats influencing our own nomination contests. Obviously, in a general election, you vote for whomever you want. Everybody is entitled to vote who's eligible. But in the primaries, that should be the Republican Party determining who the Republican candidates are going to be in that general election.
Absolutely. And now I think the rules, according to the SEC, have changed since 2022. So I think the standard is higher than they were then. In my opinion, it's still not high enough. But all the more, regardless of what the standard is, it should not be allowed that we have somebody from another party voting in our primary, bottom line.
What the SEC did is they tightened up the rules on who was an eligible candidate. But the SEC, unfortunately, has no way to determine who can vote in these primaries, in these nomination contests. That's dictated by our state legislature. And one of the things the Williamson County Republican Party has done is highlight that as a major issue. We need party registration here in Tennessee, and the previous board, they took several steps to basically try to bring us towards a party registration type system.
Right, and the establishment doesn't support that because a lot of them rely on Democrat crossover votes, and they certainly like to have the Democrats cross over in a primary to help elect the least conservative Republican.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean they're all for that. I mean this legislation that you're referencing did not pass this session as far as registration goes. That we weren't able to get that through, and with a Republican supermajority, we could not get that through, and I think that's a disgrace.
So, yeah, a little history there. Apparently, there have been two previous attempts prior to this past legislative session to get party registration passed in in our legislature, and both times previously it failed. Well, this time you had, I think it was House Bill 886 and Senate Bill 777 that were making their way through, and the House bill actually made it a lot further than previous attempts had. However, it got stuck behind the budget, which basically is fancy talk for, because it was not considered a budget priority, it's not going to get the funding that it would require. Now, it only had, I think it was $140,000 fiscal note attached to it. So in the grand scheme of the budget of Tennessee,
that's
a
nothing.
Very small amount. But it made it almost all the way through the Tennessee House of Representatives. I mean, it made it through the Tennessee House of Representatives. It just got stuck behind the budget. Now, on the Senate side, Bill 777, that one failed in the state and local government committee.
To get a second.
It failed to get a second. So, how does that happen? How does a bill like this not get a second?
Exactly. In a Republican supermajority state, you can't get a second in a Senate committee for a party registration bill. And even on the House side, you had it all the way through and they put it behind the budget. So it's not the priority of the establishment. I call them most of them in my opinion fit the category of what I call the 3 R's, rhinos, reptiles, and reprobates. But it was not important enough to allocate the money for it. We put it behind the budget on the House side, and on the Senate side, they weren't going to take any chances. Didn't even give it a second. Now, who was the Senate sponsor of that bill?
So the Senate sponsor of 777, that was Adam Lowe. Okay. But you had a couple co-sponsors come on board, and interestingly enough, they came on board after our election, after the convention in Williamson County, where me and my board were elected. And one of those co-sponsors was our state senator, Jack Johnson, the Senate Majority Leader.
Wow, co-sponsor, Senate Majority Leader, and it still doesn't get a second in a Senate committee. That's kind of strange. It's real strange if you have followed Tennessee politics for any time at all. That does not add up. So anyway, I'm hoping that this will be brought back again next session. What's that?
It was very disappointing that bill did not get a full vote. It didn't get a vote on the Senate floor, because it would have been interesting to see how the Senate would have voted on a bill that would have given Republicans and Democrats an opportunity to declare, in advance of an election, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and so you're not going to have this ability to sway the election at the last minute, which is what we've seen in Williamson County.
Right, absolutely.
And there you go.
And so we've got another slide up there, and I'm having a little trouble seeing that. Oh, about swaying the elections.
Yeah. So what you have up there on the screen is what we believe it was a targeted effort to sway the 2022 May primary. The first piece there on the left, that's a op-ed that was published in the Williamson Herald. You can see the date; it was late January 2022, and it's from a gentleman by the name of Bill Peach. And Mr. Peach, he was at one time he was the chair of the Williamson County Democrat Party. He was also a candidate for the Tennessee 63 seat that was held by Glenn Cassida, the former Speaker of the House in Tennessee. And Mr. Peach, in that letter, you can see what I've kind of highlighted there. He basically makes a very overt call for Democrats to cross over and vote in the Republican primary, and to vote for the least conservative candidate. And he uses all kinds of language that you expect to hear from a Democrat, telling anybody who disagrees with far-right extremist, blah blah blah, who is not a Saul Alinsky acolyte.
Yeah, that's par for the course with that type.
So, and Mr. Peach, pretty much. So, and Mr. Peach even says in there, we have open primaries in Tennessee, so take advantage of this and vote in this Republican primary. And he says that believes eventually that the Republicans are getting smart and they're going to close the primaries. They're going to require party registration. But in the meantime, since we don't have party registration, Democrats come out and vote in this Republican primary. Now, the other two things.
We're having a little break in commo there.
Two of the social media posts from. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's in and out. We're having some connection issues. It works for a second, and then it breaks up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hey, it happens.
There you go. Am I back?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So the other two things on that slide, if you put those back up, those are social media posts from a far left political action committee that we have here in Williamson County called Williamson Strong. Now, Williamson Strong was founded by. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I froze again. Williamson Strong was founded probably about 11 years ago, by some far-left activists, one of whom worked for SEIU, Service Employees International Union, as a paid activist. So they formed and they kind of resurrected themselves for the 2022 primary. And you can see in these two social media posts, they make an overt call for them we don't have party registration, we don't have closed primaries in Tennessee. You can vote in either one you want. Message us if you need. It is complicated. And then you can see in the middle one there at the bottom, you have somebody responding saying, "I think for strategy, I'll pick a Republican ballot and vote for the least repulsive Republican, then go back to voting Democrat in the general election." So there was a clear effort by both Mr. Peach and this Williamson Strong PAC to try to turn out the vote for Democrats, and you saw in that previous slide that it was effective in a couple of our races. You had a good conservative candidate, Chris Richards, who wound up losing his election by 11 votes because he was targeted by that far left PAC. Interestingly enough, the other candidate that was hindered by this, Ali Adair, she lost her primary by 39 votes, I think. And she was actually running on the slate against my board at this most recent reorganization convention. So that's a little interesting side note, but it just kind of points to, hey, this is something that's affecting everybody in Williamson County. It's an attempt by a small minority of Democrats to influence the politics of the Republican primaries, which is wrong.
And that's in the biggest Republican county in the state of Tennessee. So we know it goes on in every other county, and Republicans don't necessarily have as much of a margin in a lot of other counties. Now, I know that, so I'm assuming this information was probably used in your testimony on the House side, and as you said, it was passing in the House, well, it was put behind the budget in the House, which is often another way to kill it. I'm assuming this information was presented in the committee, and even on the Senate side, even though you didn't get a second, so you didn't get to actually introduce the bill, was this information maybe sent ahead of time to some of the senators on that committee? Did they have this information?
Interesting you should bring up this information, because actually I went to testify against Senate Bill 799 that would require counties to do primaries in lieu of whatever is in their bylaws to select their nominees for the general election, which in the Republican Party would be doing a convention.
Right.
So I was testifying against that, and I brought these examples to the senators because I wanted them to see that, hey, there is a problem with crossover voting in Tennessee, and it is specifically affected, candidates in Williamson County. So I wanted to bring that out, make that known to the senators, and I think we'll talk a little bit later about my experience with Senator Gardenhire. But yes, we wanted the senators, we wanted the members of the House to know that there is a problem in Williamson across Tennessee with crossover and Democrats voting in our primary.
Right, and I'm sure that was no secret to Senator Johnson, that's his district, and I'm sure other senators around there knew about that. I mean, I remember hearing about issues in the Williamson County election in 20. I remember hearing about that, and I don't live any. I don't necessarily follow Williamson County politics, so if I heard about it, I'm reasonably sure most elected officials in the GOP heard about it. So it's not really like it was some deep dark secret, but you guys provided details, and I guess you could say more proof, it was not just hearsay. So you gave some good evidence there that should have been enough. I mean, really it should be enough. It's just common sense. If you have a party, you only want people from your party voting in, unless you're a rhino, a reptile, or reprobate, because you really want all the help you can get from the Democrats, and you really don't like conservatives. I think our establishment GOP in Tennessee really hates conservatives probably more than they hate Democrats. That's my opinion, and that seems to be by their actions. I think I can make a good case for that.
Well, and that was one of the reasons why I helped the previous board get elected in 2023, because we saw that there seemed to be this obvious disparity in how the candidates that the conservative Williamson Families PAC was supporting, how they were treated by this far left PAC, by the media establishment here in Williamson County, and really by the county party itself, versus the candidates that were, how you want to say it, favored by the establishment, the established order here in Williamson County. Absolutely. So yes, there definitely was a definite. It felt like a finger on the scale.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the 2024, the 25 race. I mean, I know this is what I do know of it. I mean, I know you had you even had the governor. You even had the governor opposing the conservatives in the Williamson County GOP. Obviously, you had Senator Johnson opposing him. But let's just talk about that race a little bit. What can you tell us about that and maybe some of the tactics that they used?
Well, so we formed our proposed board back in late December, early January. We tried to basically follow the same model that we followed in 2023, where we were going to run on a positive message. We were going to have a kind of a mom and pop style campaign where kind of low fidelity videos and just kind of outreach, get out the vote kind of an operation. We had a very small budget. I think we each kicked in maybe a couple $300. I think I put $500 or $600 into it, but definitely not a big campaign. We had a target of how many voters we were going to have to turn out in order to win. We knew that we weren't going to be able to surprise the opposition like we did the previous time, but we certainly didn't expect what wound up getting thrown at us. The first indication that something was up was if I attended the board meetings leading up to the announcement of the reorganization convention, and we noticed this one individual who was known to us as a political campaign strategist, and we theorized that he was probably working for whomever was going to be running as opposed to the basically the incumbent slate, which I was a part of, that would be running in the organization. So he was showing up, and then once the convention was announced, we discovered a website, Williamson County Conservatives, popped up, and they did a slow rollout of their proposed slate of their who they have running, and they did it one by one candidate one day, then another candidate the next day, and so on and so forth over the course of a week, kind of trying to build suspense, and then they announced the chair candidate, who was a county commissioner here in Williamson County, who likely is going to try to run for mayor here in the next cycle. And then then we began to realize the full weight of what we were against. And that came in the form of a blizzard of mailers that went out to every qualified participant for the convention.
Let me ask you something. I got to ask you something. Have you, and I know you said you haven't been involved in politics that long, a mailer for a GOP county chair race?
Yes.
And did you see that in 23, or did you see that in any of them prior? I'm just curious. That just seems crazy to me.
Well, not for the county reorganization convention. In 2023, we had a small budget. We had postcards that we handed out at the door.
Right.
But I don't believe that we did a mailer. So yes, this took us by surprise. They left, and it wasn't just one mailer. There was one mailer. Then there was a text campaign. Then there was robocalls. Then there was another mailer. And it just kept going and going and going. And you just looked at this and you went, how much money are they spending? And I had someone who is kind of connected to the other side, who I maintain communications with, and she said that their goal was $100,000. And I believe we won't know the full amount until the PAC report is filed.
Right.
They have we won't know the full impact or the full amount that was raised and spent until beginning of July. But I do believe it probably was $100,000 for a bunch of volunteer positions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not like there's any money or fame in this.
Right.
It's a volunteer position, and it's a lot of work.
Well, there's other issues. The issue's never the issue. So there's got to be other reasons, and maybe you can talk about some of those. But now they were calling themselves the Wilson County Conservatives.
Williamson County Conservatives, yeah.
Okay.
They had a lot of money behind them, so they probably did some marketing and figured out, oh yeah, this is something we can play on, and they branded themselves and tried to play themselves up as the true conservatives in the race, which was a little laughable, but okay.
Right. And what were you guys calling? How were you guys identifying yourself?
So in 2023, I came up with the idea of branding the slate of candidates that we're running, and I'll address why we ran as a slate here in a second. But we branded the slate of candidates as Vision 2023. We wanted to project a positive, forward-looking vision for the Williamson County Republican Party. So for 2025, we had a meeting and we discussed, okay, how do we want to brand ourselves? What are we going to use as our catch line? And we came up with the idea of Elevate. We had taken the party in 2023 and 2024 and the beginning of 2025 to new levels. Well, we wanted to take it even higher. We wanted to elevate above where we had taken the party already. So that's how we had branded ourselves, Elevate 2025. And this is a strategy that kind of has been used around the state now and adopted by other counties to elect slates of candidates. Now, I said I wanted to explain why we ran as a slate. Well, in previous campaigns, you had individual candidates running and will get elected. In 2021, you basically had kind of a split board. You had a certain number of candidates that were aligned more with the establishment. You had a certain number that were notionally aligned with the conservatives. Well, what we discovered was that there was a conscious effort to drive out the conservatives or co-opt the conservatives and try to steer them towards the more establishment side of the party. And perhaps the most egregious thing that happened was the removal of the conservative first vice chair in, quite honestly, what was a kangaroo court that never should have happened, and that we're going to address here in the not too distant future. It was pretty egregious. It created a lot of bad blood, and kind of convinced me, and I think convinced a lot of people, that in order to have a functioning Republican Party, you have to have a slate. You have to have a group of people that are ideologically aligned, that are going to focus on. And I told the board in 2023 when they ran, I said, I want you guys to run the party in such a way that it takes the boot off the neck of the conservatives. I don't want to put the boot on the neck of the establishment. That's wrong. The county party should be neutral towards all players until after the primary, until after the nominating convention, nominating however you're going to nominate people, and then the party is supposed to support the Republicans who are in the general election race. So that was my charge to the Vision 2023 candidates, and that's how we are operating. We want a party that is citizen centric. We want the citizens to really kind of dictate how we operate. But we're going to give every candidate an equal chance to succeed or not in our nominating contest. So anyway, we ran as a slate because they're really right now, until there's a level of trust that can be developed between the establishment, or whatever you want to call them, and the grassroots conservatives in Williamson County, I think you're going to see slates run for the foreseeable future. And I talked with one of the people who was on the opposing slate. Sat down and spent 2.5 hours with her, and she kind of lamented, why do we have to run as a slate? And the reality is, I would like that not to be the case, but until there can be that level of trust that hey, we're not going to use the party apparatus to crush you, or to put our finger on the scale against you, then you're going to have this. We have to run as a slate. You're not going to. I don't think they're going to have individual candidates run.
So during the election in 25, I think you told me, maybe somebody else, since they were running this like a regular campaign, and in a regular campaign, not only do you send out flyers, but you normally put out some stuff that might not be so true about some of the opponents, and try to frame them in a certain way. So I think we had some of that in this as well. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So our opponents were hard negative right out the gate. They attacked us up one side and down the other. Now, they almost had to, because the county party was doing and is doing very, very well. We had increased membership, I think 70% over what it was when the Vision 2023 slate took charge. They'd increased donations. Our Chairman's Club, the top tier donors, that was up 50% or so. So, by all measurable accounts, the county party was doing very well. Well, they came out with, first of all, some very questionable math to try to say, no, the county party's not doing well. But then they followed that up with kind of the tagline for their entire campaign, which was, we were going to steal their vote. We were going to make it an insiders only party where everything's done in a back room, and voters don't have a say in how we choose our candidates. And of course, that was all very negative and very wrong. And we basically ran our campaign as a positive. This is what we want to do, and our goal was to continue kind of threefold: continue the operational, fiduciary, and ideological excellence of the Vision 2023 slate. We wanted to get the party out of Franklin, so we would have events outside in municipalities like Nolensville, Spring Hill, Fairview, Thompson Station, Brentwood, so that people in other areas outside of Franklin know that this is their party as well. And finally, we want to bring new people into the party. We want to bring in young people. We want to bring in your America First Trump voters, and we want to bring in new residents, people who moved here from California or Michigan or New York, and let them know that, hey, if you escaped a blue hellhole, you have allies here that want to make sure that this does not become like that. Right. So that was basically how we ran our campaign. We tried to make it a very uplifting campaign. And meanwhile, we got $100,000 being thrown at us, and basically saying that we're just a little bit to the right of of Joseph Stalin. In fact, I think they used Joseph Stalin in one of their mailers, which was incredible.
You got to be kidding me!
No, and that was very hurtful and insulting. We have a member of my board who has ancestors who were persecuted by Stalin. So that.
Well, and you're a veteran. You served 22 years.
And I found it very disgusting. And I think there's certain lines that you should not cross in a political campaign. And lying should be number one. You should never lie about somebody else. But using the dark imagery against people who are in your own party, it was disgusting. And I had somebody, I think it was the same person who lamented how she couldn't run as an individual, she had to run as part of the slate. Who said, "Well, that's just politics." When I said how wrong that was, well, that's just politics. No, that's not. We need to have some basic ground rules that hey, you're not gonna try to destroy your opponent. That's not acceptable. It never should. If you want to fight a war, go fight a war. But politics is about determining how we're going to be governed, and you don't want that to turn into a blood match, because I've been to places where people rule with an iron fist, and that's not a good place, and that breeds a lot of animosity that will bubble up at some point. So I think we need to dial back the tone of some of our political campaigns just a little bit. Focus on facts. Don't focus on the individual. Don't attack the individual. Attack ideas. Let's leave the dark imagery of Joseph Stalin and Xi Jinping, which was another one that was used. Put that in where it belongs, which is in the gutter, and we shouldn't be there.
And to top it off, they had Bill Lee supporting them, right?
Governor Lee was at the convention, and I believe he was probably supporting their slate. Yes.
Well, if he was supporting you, you would know it, right?
Probably, yes.
But now, okay, so the final. What was the final vote?
So you had pretty much an equal split right down the middle. You had right around 800 votes for our slate and 750 votes for the other slate. Now, there was a little bit of variance. There were a couple of races that were a little bit closer. I think the closest race was 24 votes, and the biggest margin of victory was something like 80 votes. But it was right in that range. It was a pretty even split, and I would attribute that to the negative campaign that they ran, which sad to say, negative campaigns can sway elections, and I think it's up to us, the voters, when we see that tactic being used, when we see the personal attacks coming out, when we see the dark imagery that evil is going to happen at this group. I think when we see that, we have to say, no, if somebody's employing that, maybe that's not somebody I should be supporting. And indeed, that was some of the feedback that we received from some of the voters. Is that dark imagery that just permeated our opponent's race, that convinced them that that's not a group of people that I want to support. That's not the vision that I want for the Williamson County Republican Party. And
then there's some other hypocrisy in this. For years and years, I've heard establishment types tell me, well, you shouldn't ask these questions of our candidates or our elected representatives, by asking them a hard question or criticizing them in a forum. Well, you're being disrespectful. You shouldn't treat art. But then they come out with this kind of garbage. Those are the exact kind of people, same kind of people who will get upset if an elected official is asked a hard question. Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't mind answering hard questions, but I'd like it to be kind of equal. Now, I got convinced to go on the Dan Mandis show in Nashville by someone who said that he would give me a chance to speak. He would give me a chance to answer questions, and I went on, and for about a minute he allowed me to speak, but then it went right back to, are you going to cancel primaries? Are you going to cancel primaries? And I told him honestly.
Are you going to do what now? Say that again. Are you going to what?
are you guys going to cancel primaries? That's basically what our folks were running on, that we were going to cancel primaries. And I told him, honestly, we have not made that decision. That is a decision to be made next year sometime if that would come to pass. But it reiterated, we wanted party registration to pass. We had advocated for party registration. We wanted that legislation to pass this cycle, and we believed that was probably the best strategy that we had to limiting this crossover voting in Williamson County. But he wouldn't let it go, and he would not accept that we had not made a decision, which was the truth.
Well, you know, I've listened to 99.7. I'm not impressed. I hear all the establishment people they have on there all the time. Any radio station that thinks Jack Johnson is a conservative doesn't have a clue, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and I wouldn't have a problem with asking me those kind of tough questions, but be consistent. If you're gonna grill me like that, if you're gonna grill somebody like Todd Warner, who had a similar experience on 99.7,
yep.
Then do the same to another elected official. Do the same to the, if you want to call them the establishment politicians. But be consistent. Otherwise you come across as a propaganda outlet.
Yeah. Now, your actual race, what was the margin in that between you and whoever was running for chair?
So I was running against Brian Clifford, who is a county commissioner here in Williamson County. He's positioning himself to run for mayor next cycle. I think that race initially was 795 to 751. I think so. What's that? 44 votes.
That's good.
So pretty close. Now Clifford asked for a recount, and I gained 3 votes and he lost 1 vote in the recount. So it was right around 50-ish votes was the margin.
Yeah, that's right. There was a call for a recount. Now, was the recount? I mean, I know in some cases, if it's within a certain margin, there's almost an automatic. But this was not an automatic. This was one that they asked for just because it was pretty close.
Yeah, my impression, and I don't know if this is true or not, but my impression was they were trying to do with the recount and then with the later challenge to try to throw as much doubt and discredit the process, the convention, how the convention played out as possible, so that they could later claim this was somehow illegitimate. That has been I think that's been their strategy the whole time. So, we did the recount that evening, and like I said, I gained 3 votes and Clifford lost 1 vote. And first of all, Clifford was the one who asked for the recount, but he wouldn't stick around for the recount. He outsourced that to his campaign manager, Brian Floyd. The SEC, the State Executive Committee people, they did the recount, and they asked him afterwards. They asked Floyd afterwards, "Do you want to recount the other races?" And Floyd said, "No. My experience is once you get an answer on one race, they're all going to pretty much flow the same way." So we did that one recount of that one race, and then several days later they came in with their challenge.
Yeah, I want to get to the issue of primaries, the law that the legislature passed forcing county parties to do primaries for certain races. Anything else you want to say about this before we move to that?
Just that we are focused on moving ahead, moving the party forward. Our former opponents, they have their PAC. They are trying to run a shadow campaign, a shadow party really against us. They're doing their events on the same nights that we do our events. They just rolled out a donation platform, so they're intent on basically trying to compete with the Williamson County Republican Party, which quite honestly is a shame. And I would just ask, if you're a Republican in Williamson County, come to the real deal. Don't go to the fake Walmart soda option.
Okay, don't go to the knockoff party. Okay, so we've got this tape of you. Now, this had to do with the bill that the our GOP majority, and I'm trying to remember who the sponsors were. I think Johnson was the Senate sponsor, right? And the House sponsor was Lee Reeves. And this bill basically forces county parties to have a primary for county races. Well, county and district races. It doesn't affect state races, correct? Doesn't have anything to do with state races.
State race is already required.
Right, yeah, those are already called. And it's not in reference to the county GOP, but it's county commission, school board, let's see, I guess some judge races, some races, judiciary races, yes.
Assessor of deeds.
All those type county positions. Okay, gotcha. So forcing a primary, where in the past you could do a convention / caucus, and that's what most counties did. Now, this was really done, I mean, you know how dirty it's been on it, because it made it through and there was no fiscal note on it, and then boom, after it gets through, all of a sudden there's a fiscal note, but that's not a problem. We'll just cut some money from somewhere else and we'll fund this. Wow. But
if you're somebody who cares about the Duck River watershed, you should be a little upset at this, because they took money out of Duck River in order to fund this. And I've also heard that they might have taken money out of a anti-trafficking bill that had passed. So
wouldn't surprise me.
It frustrates me that we couldn't get party registration passed, because $140,000. But we're going to go ahead and start stealing from other pots of money, important pots of money, to fund this $8 million to force Williamson County to have a primary.
Yeah,
that's really what it was about. They would not accept that. Hey, we want a party registration. They wanted to make sure they had this insurance policy that if we didn't get party registration, which I don't think they intended to pass that, that we couldn't have any other option.
Yeah, it's just, so we're not going to give you party registration. We're going to force primaries on you, though. Okay, so now we're going to roll the tape, and this is the tape you're testifying in. Was this the State and Local Government Committee? I think.
The Senate, State, and Local Government.
Senate, State, and Local Government Committee, and you're testifying against this bill. This is Jack Johnson's bill that basically wanted to force primaries. Now, just a quick question here. Isn't his wife a judge in the district?
Yes.
Okay, so if potentially your county GOP could have forced, if they didn't pass a law forcing primaries, then you guys could do a convention or caucus impacting that race. Am I accurate?
Yes.
Wow. I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. I just thought I'd bring that up. So anyway, but this is your exchange with Senator Gardenhire in the committee. You're testifying against the primary bill, and when I think if you've watched our state politics any length of time, that our Senate is the problem. Pick a bill, pick a topic. Our Senate is the problem 9 times out of 10. And when I think of how sorry our Senate is, and this is even before this tape, okay, Gardenhire has been around for years. He loves the illegal aliens. There's never been an illegal alien bill that he didn't support. If it was promoting illegal immigration in any way, shape, or form, helping the illegals in any way, shape, or form, he was for it. So when I think of how sorry, he's one of the top 3 people I think of. I think of McNally, I think of him, and I think of Johnson. And that was before this tape. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and roll the tape, and I want everybody to hear this. He's talking to you, a citizen who came to testify in committee, and he's a sitting senator, and the way he treats you, I don't know how you maintained it. But hats off to you. I would have been in trouble. I would have said something. But anyhow, let's roll the tape.
Define Republican.
Do you want the?
I want you to define.
You want me to define
You use
Republican?
that term 2 or 3 terms, so I want you to define Republican. You can define however you want to, but you're going to be on the record.
I consider a Republican someone who holds conservative values, who honors the Constitution, who, because they claim to be a Republican, is going to follow the Republican Party platform.
But you've said before, had to vote in how many presidential elections? And
Three out of the last four
Excuse
Republican
me, I'll
primaries.
interrupt you in a minute if you'll keep your mouth shut until I'm finished asking a question. You got that? Now, you've defined Republicans 2 or 3 ways. I want you to pick one and stick with it, and don't interrupt me again.
Senator, are you asking me, or are you
I'm asking you. You're testifying. Nobody else in this room is up here but you. And I'm asking you directly.
Senator, you were asking my personal opinion. I gave you my personal opinion. The state.
Give it again.
Senator, I said a Republican is a conservative, someone who holds conservative values, who honors the Republican Party platform. Are you asking how the state Republican Party defines Republican? And what I said is the state defines it as someone who has voted in 3 out of the last 4 Republican primaries.
Have you ever heard of the Sharon Statement, September 1960?
No, Senator.
I didn't think you had. It defines, that's when libertarians and conservatives got together at Sharon, Connecticut, at the home of William F. Buckley, and they defined what a conservative was. Had nothing to do with red meat issues that pop up all the time. So when you say conservative values, those things seem to change from election to election depending on what's exciting in here. But I would rather vote for somebody and have a candidate that has a principled definition of a conservative and not just throw that name around just to make it convenient for somebody to stand up and say, I'm a conservative because I hate so-and-so.
You know, that guy just flat out rude, and the chairman, I guarantee you, if you had even said anything, and that's probably why you didn't, if you'd have said anything disrespectful, they would have shut you down immediately. I've never seen a witness, and maybe it's happened before. Maybe he's done this to other witnesses. I've never seen that. I have never seen that. Not that I'm impressed with the chairman. I know the deal on Briggs, but Briggs, the guy running that show, he should have stepped in. He should have stepped in. Because you guys only get 3 minutes, and if you'd have said the wrong thing, they would have thrown you out there without a second thought, or they would have told you, look, only giving you one warning. That was wrong for them to allow him to talk to you the way he did.
Yeah, I agree. Article 1, Section 1 of the Tennessee State Constitution, I believe, says all power is inherent in citizens, people. And while I believe that our elected officials deserve respect for the office that they hold, I think there needs to be a corresponding understanding that they only have power that we the people give them, and that they themselves are merely vessels for what our desires as free people are. And I felt Senator Gardenhire's outburst, and that's what I'll call it, was inappropriate and very unbecoming of an elected official.
Yeah. You know, also in our state constitution, and I can't give you chapter and verse, but I'm sure you could ask Richard Archie for it and he'd give it to you. But in our state constitution, we are to instruct our legislators. Okay, so I mean that, like you said, they work for us, and this guy's out of control. But anyway, hey, any closing thoughts on anything we've talked about, or something we haven't brought up that you want to hit?
Well, you brought Gardenhire into this thing, and his main point there at the end, bring up the Sharon document was that being a conservative is more than just glomming onto whatever the topic du jour is, whether it's gun rights, whether it's abortion, whether it's whatever. And I actually agree with the senator on that. You see up there on the right side, blog piece, what is a conservative? I wrote that 3 years ago for Williamson families, and I kind of highlight in there the basic tenets that I believe we need to acknowledge. And it starts that we are all children of God. Okay, we are all created by an all-powerful Creator who loves us and who endowed us with inalienable rights. So we have rights regardless of what men like Todd Gardenhire or others may say. But along with that, we are all very, very flawed beings. We are all prone to sin, and we all have the capacity to do some bad things. So we create this thing called government to kind of help us, live
mitigate some of that.
mitigate some of that.
Yeah.
But anything created by man is going to be imperfect by definition. So you need checks and balances on that in order to make sure that man can't use this tool, and that's what government is, for bad purposes. So that kind of should form the basis of any conservative thought, and from that you kind of branch off and go, okay, if I don't want government to become all powerful, maybe I should have a provision that citizens, and we are citizens, not subjects, we should have the ability to defend ourselves if that government becomes tyrannical.
Yep.
Maybe I should have the ability as a free citizen to be able to speak out to that government and express my dissatisfaction with it at a committee meeting, and be able to be heard in a forum such as that committee hearing, and have the senators or representatives take what I have to say to heart, and know that they will be held accountable at some point for that. So that, I think, forms the basis of what a conservative is. So in a lot of ways, I am in agreement with the senator, but totally in disagreement with how he chose to comport himself, and in disagreement with how that bill was later adjudicated. The Republican Party is a private organization.
Yep.
It's really no different than the Kiwanis Club or from a garden club of women that get together and read books. Do we put restrictions on those organizations on how they have to determine who their leadership is going to be? No, we don't. And that's because they're private organizations, and we respect the freedom of association necessary for those organizations to exist. So, I said that we had not made up our minds to do a convention, caucus, whatever you want to call it next year. And that's true. We had not. But taking that right away from a private organization, I think people need to wake up and go, if they can take this right away from this organization, what's next? Look what just happened in Washington State. You had the Attorney General, I think, for Washington State come out and say that the Catholic priests have to divulge what is said in the confessional if it involves somebody who confesses a certain charge. Well, what's next? Are they going to bring every Catholic priest before a judge and force them to divulge what is said in every confessional that they every confessor that comes to them?
Right. And if they don't, they'll be held in contempt and put in jail. That's
exactly. So at what point is our government getting out of control? And I think my concern with this bill that was passed is that it is indicative of a mindset that state power can be used however the people who are in charge deem to use it. And if they deem to use it for bad purposes, then we're going to have to suffer the consequences.
Yeah. And like you said, we're a private party. I'll be honest with you. I don't even think, I think our primaries, when we have the primaries for the ones we decide to have, I think we should pay the bill. I don't think the state money should be involved in our primaries. And I definitely don't think they should be able to tell county parties, you have to have a primary. And I agree with you. If they can tell a private political party how they have to run their internal operations, they can tell any other private party how they run their internal operations. And that's way too far. Now, I know that there's a case up in Virginia that I guess we're kind of waiting to see what happens. So there is a good possibility that you guys are going to, the SEC is going to file a lawsuit against the state. And I hope they do. And I think they would have a good chance of winning. I know there's some precedent for this, and I'm not a huge fan of precedent. I'm not a huge fan of the courts, but this is flat out wrong. This is flat out wrong what our state's trying to do.
Well, I would just like to encourage anybody, if you're in Williamson County, please take a look at the Williamson County Republican Party. Like I said, we are a citizen-centric organization. We want to engage with the citizens, and we want to empower citizens to have a say in their government. We want citizens, if you feel called to leadership, we want you to consider running for office. Iron sharpens iron. It's not that we don't like our elected officials that we have now. It's that, hey, if there are other ideas out there, let's hear them, and let's have a forum of ideas. And that's what our primaries are supposed to be, is a forum of ideas, and give the electorate a chance to see, other ideas that might be out there for governing our county. Our county faces a lot of challenges right now. We have the second highest debt load in Tennessee. We're already at 1.2 billion, and we're climbing. We're gonna well exceed that here in a couple of years. In the schools, we have a school budget that's nearly it's over $500 million, and beyond that, we have challenges with curriculum that some people find a little objectionable, and we need good people to come forward and kind of ask questions, and if you're called to run, then run for office and project what your vision for the schools should be. So I would encourage anybody out there, check out the Williamson County Republican Party. I think we have a QR code that you can scan, and
there you go.
There we go. Yeah, scan that QR code, and it'll take you to our website. Give you a chance to sign up for a newsletter. We have a monthly news blast that goes out. We have social media pages. You can follow what we're doing. We have monthly events. We have what we call a mix and mingle on the last Thursday of every month, where we bring in oftentimes guest speakers. I think next month in June, we're going to bring in John Harris from Tennessee Firearms Association, talk about Second Amendment issues, and talk about intent to go armed, and hopefully get that overturned. We're going to have other speakers later on this year. I'm going to bring in Mark Herb from the Center for Self-Governance out of Washington State, and to talk about constitutional governance and how citizens can be empowered to participate in their governing process. So, we are an active organization. We want citizen engagement. Today I just had the first what I call coffee with the chairman. It's part of our effort to try to get outside of Franklin. I went to Nolensville, and we probably had close to 20 people come out and get to know the party a little bit better. So
sounds like you got a lot going on.
We do. We have quite a bit going on.
Good. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for all you do. Definitely love to have you back on.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell, so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Please find and follow us on Facebook and X. This Wednesday, we will have a special show that will air at 5 p.m. featuring Dr. Bill Warner and Milan Podlipany, the founders of the Center for the Study of Political Islam, and what everyone needs to understand about it, to include how to fight back. Our guest next week, May 12th, will be H.K. Egerton, the Black Confederate. He'll join us to provide some rarely heard but desperately needed historical truth about our bloodiest conflict and its aftermath. Hope you'll join us again next week. That's it for now, and good night from Paris. Tennessee, that is.